As many of you probably know, Kirby games tend to reveal many memorable secrets and additional modes after beating the main adventure. Extra difficult playthroughs or new playable characters became somewhat of a tradition, and however a new Kirby entry decides to picture their post-game, it's safe to assume to fight most of the bosses a second time. Often these enemies get their chance to show their true potential and sometimes even play out completely different. Previously we ranked all of the regular boss enemies of Kirby and the Forgotten Land, and viewers rightfully asked themselves, what about the post-game? It's not only about fighting once defeated foes another time, but adding completely new opponents as well, which is why we decided to dedicate an extra ranking to Kirby and the Forgotten Land's post-game bosses. Each placement is based on how they either improve on the original or simply bring something new to the table, so it's recommended to watch the regular boss ranking first before going into this list. You might be surprised how much has changed in comparison. Yet again, Gorimondo is relegated to dwell on the last place. Generally speaking, there's nothing wrong with this fight as such, as the monster becomes much faster, aggressive and overall challenging. It would not be too shameful to die at least once during the battle, as Phantom Gorimondo basically sets the bar for what is to be expected in the future. Still, the only real new move he shows is an improved Donkey Kong up B with an additional tornadoes, while all the other techniques are just a little faster. He might be the first post-game boss, but I think some attacks are still too easy to dodge, like simply flying above his arm swings or grab. Phantom Gorimondo is demanding, feisty and merciless, yet nothing but a tasty appetizer. Going from the second top to the second last, it seems like Meta Knight dropped quite some heart in terms of what his Phantom version has to offer. This is only partially true, as Phantom Meta Knight follows a similar pattern as Gorimondo by simply fine-tuning instead of changing. Every move and every sword swing is quicker and more unpredictable, with the iconic clash being more tricky to counter. The obvious highlight is the enhanced rock technique with 2 more waves to avoid and less time to react. Despite the lower ranking, Phantom Meta Knight is at its core extremely action-packed and way more fast-paced than most opponents on this list. The reason for the grounded overhaul is probably the nature of the fight itself. Phantom Meta Knight is not a part of the post-game adventure and, again, a bonus during the final Colosseum Cup. Optionality being packed by optionality, so to speak. Every upgrade is a gift on its own, and I have to absolutely commend how amazing the battlefield looks with the new colors and lighting. Besides, a certain other sword-swinging knight fulfills a fairly similar role on this list as well, using this rendition basically as a foundation. Putting my favorite boss of the Forgotten Land on such a low place was surely quite heartbreaking. Normally I would gush over everything that silly Dilo has to offer, but at the same time I have to be honest with myself. Most bosses in this list improve on their original design with many unexpected surprises and new attacks, while Phantom Silly Dilo simply adds one additional skill and weather-changing ability. The first encounter already suffered from a rather linear attack pattern, and the second encounter could have been the perfect chance to make the best boss fight in the game even more best. The reason why he is still above the previous enemies is simple, because I still adore this foe and his new attack, the explosive Kirby's. During the regular battle, I wish they could have translated his obscure hobby more directly into the battle, and luckily the only novel ability they implemented are self-made combustible mock-ups. What's more is how a sandstorm might appear like a simple accessory, as it doesn't even count as an additional attack, but harmonizes greatly with his lovely dance. Another small detail detail is how silly Dilo doesn't stumble anymore, giving you less opportunities to strike back. If you haven't mastered the dodge roll by this point, Phantom Silly Dilo might give you some serious problems, and despite being a fairly simplistic upgrade from the original, I can still deeply resonate with this creature for some reason. Chromaline is a special case where I couldn't quite grasp how they would refine her battle. At the same time, it always felt like the original Clash didn't live up to its true potential as well, so in order to not get disappointed, I basically expected the same changes as with Gorimondo: faster attacks, a more aggressive behavior, and general increase in difficulty. Much to my surprise, the confrontation immediately starts with a technique Chromaline used as a last ace before, followed by quick projectiles. The first half is portrayed by the minimum of what I want to see from a Phantom boss, but it's the second half which shows the leopard's true claws. Normally she would jump up to one of the steel structures, throw some needles and complete her act with a mighty dash. In this version, however, Chromaline duplicates herself into 4 identical copies, with one after another dashing across the arena. Fundamentally, it's just a more targeted variant of the original Clash, but looks way more spectacular and impressive thanks to the supporting camera shifts. I do have to say, despite being such an improvement, it's still way too easy to simply dodge by flying above every attack. In the normal run, the player's driven to try not to fly due to a certain bonus mission, but in this case there's no reason to take a risk. Luckily, the fight is fairly challenging enough, and as one small final touch, Phantom Chromaline is even able to perform a claw swipe similar to Leongar. Initially it may appear as a lesser, weaker version, but narratively it makes absolutely sense, as it would be weird seeing her outperform her leader. It's a great nod for people who are aware of the total package, making this boss a more than solid rendition. What is there to say that wasn't already mentioned during the regular boss ranking? Once again, the first Phantom DDD encounter is more on the safe side and doesn't add too much to its blueprint. A welcome new addition are spiky Gordos, who fill the battlefield with a slowly moving danger, but otherwise, the battle in the church is just a quicker and stronger version from the original. The other side of the coin, however, is the second confrontation surrounded by dangerous molten rocks. The fight always reminded me of the Goron battle in Zelda Twilight Princess, and the main reason for that is the battlefield itself. Instead of simply dashing at Kirby and using everything Phantom DDD is physically able to do, this time he makes use of the surroundings more effectively, summoning falling rocks with his mighty voice and nearly turning over the whole arena. Even if you have mastered all of Kirby's abilities and the dodge roll, he's still pretty challenging regarding how most of his attacks either require you to jump or be quick on your feet all the time. It's probably safe to say this is one, if not the most brutal King DDD fight so far, and it makes me really happy to see how intimidating Kirby's rivals still can be, although being mind-controlled. The only reason our king dropped a little is not necessarily because of his fights becoming less thrilling, but mainly due to how everyone who's following just improved that much. Hinted at the beginning, it's not a huge surprise to see the deadly fire red butterfly back in action again. After an exhausting fight against the powered-up Leongar, the last remains of Elphalith's other half, Soul Forgo, start to gather their force and initiate the traditional Soul Boss for this game. At least that is what it looks like. Just like in Kirby Star Allies, the now not so unobtrusive butterfly makes use of Soul Forgo as a host and materializes its body once again to take revenge in 3D. Just like every other traditional enemy, Morphonite lives by the benefit of translating his original final battle into 3D, despite appearing only one time so far. This doesn't mean harm to him though, as all of his attacks seem familiar yet are quite unpredictable if you don't watch your step. Classic teleporting and quick sword swings are reminiscent of Meta Knight's deadly swordsmanship, not to mention of huge fire waves in combination of creating chasing soul demons. One detail that is worth pointing out, and quite an interesting note from the developers, is how the demon is formed like Soul Forgo, whereas in Star Allies this attack resembled some kind of unknown creature. It's safe to say this skill resembles the host the butterfly inherits and makes Star Allies' alternative all the more mysterious. But there's not enough time to theorize when Morphonite starts to open the second phase with an additional sword, both of them becoming as big as the Crimson Knight would like them to be. These strikes are rather easy to dodge, but look all the more impressive and come out faster than you would expect. Besides attacking much quicker and being more aggressive, the second phase is not too different from before, but the simple increase of movement and intimidation is everything this encounter needs at that point. The shockwaves, once used to turn friends into enemies, now send you into a state of trance, turning the tables against you and being amazingly adjusted to the 3D environments. The sheer fact Morphonites returned so quickly and feel stronger than ever is proof of how the developers probably had a 3D fight in mind all along, and you can definitely see it. Also, we should probably not forget the Morphonite sword upgrade, where you are able to perform most of his special moves on top of being able to steal the enemy's life energy in order to heal yourself. It's not only about the battle serving as a satisfying conclusion to an exciting post-game, but the reward for coming this far as well. As the final opponent in the true arena, Chaos Alpha Liz was destined to put up a more than worthy fight. At first I expected basically the same like with every other boss, with one or two new techniques, as the true enemy would probably show itself after winning. Wink, wink. But much to my surprise, the complete opposite happened here. The Master of Teleportation uses his quick, unpredictable movement to give his moves a sense of delay, while assaulting from the distance as well. It's a small addition and nothing new for a Kirby boss, but makes Chaos Alpha Liz's whole behavior different. The truly impressive addition though is the second phase, where Alpha Lin's other half starts to summon some kind of giant version of himself, shooting with arrows and swinging his massive spear after you. It may not be particularly hard to dodge, but makes up for amazing visuals and lets the fight play out nearly completely different from the original. Of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg, as all the other moves resemble the power of Chaos Alpha Liz's last ditch attempt to finally consume everything. It's a great overall package, and even without the little extra that will come afterwards, this second climax does not need to hide behind the legacy of other iconic true arena bosses. As teased in the regular boss ranking video, this version of Leongar no longer sits at last place, and rightfully so. While the first clash felt like a rushed battle against what is supposed to be a key figure at the end of the game, this Leongar is the mainstay of the post-game and must be rescued after collecting his shattered souls. The first phase is basically the same like before, showing how this is now a mere introduction of what is supposed to be Leongar's true power. This time the fight evolves into the scenario I was hoping to see in the regular game, with Soul Forgo acting as a supporter who engages from behind. It's not like you have to fight two separate bosses, but keep an eye out instead, as Leongar himself is still more than capable enough to carry this battle on his own. I particularly remember the sneaky bomb attack from behind, covering the whole arena while you try to dodge the falling rocks. As if this isn't enough, Soul Forgo occasionally uses energy bolts with the classic shockwaves afterwards, adding another layer to the fight. The synergy between both of these forces is just amazingly executed, and having a secondary foe in the background without fighting him directly is not only unique in this game, but finally gives me the Leongar clash I was hoping for. It might come off as a joke, but Phantomtropic Woods indeed claims the second place of this boss ranking. As I stated at the start, this list is all about improving on the original, and our favorite tree excels in that regard. Unlike Leongar, who obviously was held back for the post-game, Phantomtropic Woods did not need to go all out or enhance nearly every single attack. In my regular boss ranking, I mentioned how a 3-dimensional battle against Wispy Woods would ideally use the whole battlefield as its playground due to his stationary nature. While Tropic Woods played into that role to some extent, it wasn't enough to speak about the perfect rendition completely. Little did I know that the Phantom version would swipe away all doubts and deliver like no other regular boss. As you've probably noticed, many post-game bosses on this list simply improved on the counterpart by flexing with new main attack gimmicks like Gorimondo's Tornado or Chloraline's duplicates, but the Phantom tree seems to come up with more than that. Starting with simply making normal attacks harder to dodge, like the extended breath or falling Gordos. The second phase is where the music starts with a sudden labyrinth to reach the tree. This alone is such a clever addition, even though suffering from small perspective issues. But what's even more great is how the roots are played into the battle as well. After some while, Phantom Wood starts to throw out the ultimate breath, and you have to jump on top of the roots to be even able to properly dodge. In the regular fight, I started to jump all over the place just because it was entertaining, but this version makes it necessary while being fairly difficult on the first try. There was absolutely no reason to step up this fight so much in comparison to the original, which makes me wonder what kind of wacky ideas they still have for fighting a tree in the future. Having a secret final boss at the end of a true arena in a Kirby game is given at this point. The question is how frantic said enemy is going to be, considering this is the first proper 3D title. While Chaos Alphalis by itself was rather different from his original, the Soul version appears to be quite simplistic when it comes to its design. Similar to Morphonite, this is another completely original boss and does not use any existing base for its foundation, luckily. It would have been easy to plainly make use of already developed systems, which wouldn't be contemptible taking the optional nature into account. Even so, we got a fully independent, worked out boss fight, and a quality one on top of that. The first few seconds already mirror the eerie atmosphere of the elevator scene, with some snippets of voice acting thrown in. The laser attack might be unproblematic to dodge, but comes out extremely fast and deals a massive amount of damage in comparison of what you're usually accustomed to. In the beginning, I expected this confrontation to carry on the peculiar tone until the very last strike, but much to my surprise, after reducing some health, it seems the game contains itself finally. An amazing theme kicks in and every fighter involved starts to go all out. Turning into a massive fireball and even influencing the surroundings, the Chaos Soul throws some rocks at you as a preparation for a giant dash. What makes the sequence so memorable is not only the grandiose appearance, but how this involves jumping on top of the stone pillars to have a chance to dodge. A good platforming boss is able to create a scenario where the essence of the genre, platforming, is somewhat included, not to speak of all the dynamic camera shifts which are nothing new at this point, but nonetheless used like in no other similar game. It's a small touch, yet I love how they kept in the UI during the sequence. Normally you would think this destroys maybe the immersion of something similar, but it keeps me in, and despite the fact you cannot control Kirby when Chaos Soul destroys the rocks and flies away, for some reason it still feels like I'm within the battle. On top of that, if the attack patterns start to repeat, the game wastes no time with showing the whole sequence again and immediately jumps to the important stuff. This is just one impressive attack though, as every other proper Soul boss is obviously necessary to perform some sort of iconic techniques, like the Drorkia bounce, the boomerangs, the paint splitting, or instant teleportation. On paper, none of these skills are new, but are greatly translated into 3D without appearing out of context or strange for newer players. From the beginning to the end, it impressed me how much effort went into this optional boss many players will not even see, making Chaos Alphaless Soul maybe even the best secret final boss of any Kirby game.